Good morning,
Good morning.
Your Holiness, and Venerable Josinpolo Rinpoche, Venerable Kaon Rinpoche, Venerable Khenpo-Kanda Rinpoche, and all the lamas and Sangha members. I'm honored to welcome Your Holiness here at the Triyana Dharmachakra, seat of His Holiness, for the third time, once again with my broken English. It is not funny, always having to apologize with my own abilities here. But however, I'm in a situation where I have to fulfill my duties, and that I've been trying to serve for the past 40 years. And it's once again beyond words how joyful and eager for us to be able to receive His Holiness. Third time, we wish that He will be visiting much more times and years to come, so that all our Sangha members would continuously receive His presence and blessings that we have been longing for the past 4 decades. And let me run a brief history of KTT so that I would at least myself feel appreciative of involvement in this grand vision of His Holiness 16th Gyalwang Karmapa. And His Holiness 16th Gyalwang Karmapa visited 3 times the United States. Since 1974, that was the first tour, grand tour of United States, North America, as well as Europe, are the various of Dharma Center's invitations. Here in America, the major invitation was extended by very venerable Vajracharya Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche to visit his centers. That was the year, actually, among all the great leaders of Tibetan, and the first one, more well known, was His Holiness 16th Karmapa, had visited this country as well as the Europe. So that is being the gateway of Dharma, and that we have been also involved in His presence was something that I could always cannot measure how lucky or fortunate myself. Likewise, I think all the Sangha members would feel the same way. I'm not necessarily anyone that is special. But however, that 1975 Triyana Dharmachakra is initially registered under the United States Church law and found a seat of His Holiness. His Holiness 16th Karmapa, and our first and pioneer sponsor of KTT, Dr. C.T. Shen and Wu-Chu Shen, they joined this adventure of creating so-called seat of His Holiness Gyalwang Karmapa in North America. And it's been a long time, especially if I reflect briefly, almost in this country, generally Buddhism is very little known in general society, except that the different colleges might have approached by different teachers to teach in the universities. But a few of the faculties seem to have catching a little bit of sense of Dharma. But major citizens of the United States, likewise many of the Western countries, are very much unfamiliar to Buddhism. And from that on, and that till now, by looking back, the Buddhism has grown so much, tremendously in amount. For example, right here on this ground, KTT, when we founded, it was an old mid-mountain hotel, and the capacity of that main room is not bigger than 30 or 40 people can fit in. At that time, we thought this shrine is, when we try to create, more than enough space, but right now it is already too small, so our own Sangha members can't fit in here. That's how this program had to be divided into 2, being that our own unbroken line of the members who had committed for the last 3 years were not being able to fit in one group here. We had to divide into 2 groups. So once again, this is something that we always feel, always, no matter how much we're trying to create bigger space, it seems to be short of the situation. I hope it will sometime change the difference by the course of time. In any case, and today's teaching program that KDD have requested by Khenpo Rinpoche and the residence lamas to His Holiness was for the auspiciousness reason for dharmas of Gambapa, request to His Holiness. And we thought this teaching will cover for all sanghas, but again, due to the having to split the sangha to two groups, and later on we had to add another subject, which is we discussed, the program committee discussed, and what would be the best to request to His Holiness. And first thing came in our mind was a request. His Holiness is recent, his own teaching that I even haven't seen the real translation of it, but according to a Tibetan title, it's called Chodan Tumpe Komdab Gyurwa, which seems to me we're trying to change our life style according to the Dharma gradually. And that's my version of translation. There was no official translation, sorry. And I once again welcome. And at the same time, our staff member here, including the begin from our Executive Director, David Kaczynski, and Operation Director, Linda, and Finance Officer, Jeanette, KTC Coordinator, Sandy Hugh, myself have been in the Program Creation Committee, and then the rest of the staff member, all trying to work very hard, trying to fulfill, and the members to make it comfortable as possible, but we always lack of our own abilities. So please, forgive us if there's any shortage of our resource and attention to all. In any case, I welcome everyone here for this great time of our gathering. I hope everybody here feels the same way. I mean, I have no doubt that everybody is maybe more than myself, that we take a joyful event in the presence of His Holiness. And that is very rare for us to come across again. I wish everyone the greatest time and joy during your visit here. Thank you very much.
베베게 gyabji dzogchen pyono rumbuche, dana shingi gyabji kawa rumbuche, dana shingi gyabji ken rumbuche, ten shingi danga zogi gejiji unzin, tenzi chuni zor gyube, lejeb namba tsuwadang, ane jingi gindube namba tsuwadang, dana shingi nga zo gejiji ane da members of Samaloliya, dari 게지지리아다 통말 증에 맞이 출시를 채팅 다 보면은 좀 정도 아들이 인주스탄에 디기 개바 상보던 고düğünde 사물올이야 점지다 저시들이 쉬어요.
To begin, I would like to welcome all of you here, the Lords of Refuge, Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche, Somang Kawang Rinpoche, Khenpo Kadza Rinpoche, the President of Karma Triyana Dharmachakra, Mr. Tenzin Chunyi, all the members of the Sangha, and all the members of the KTD. I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to present my first teaching here at KTD, and I wish to offer you all a heartfelt Tashidele.
다드네 가산슈는 신제 디디즈 다 가슈에 수부디 마데와르 짐비 두산 디 균제데네 가산레 디린 디즈 다다 두거르비스도 다 이네 계시 방부시에서야 곧디 젠로도 다 간다야 디린 두산 디 균제데네 다 야고지 슈투야디다 마시네 야버지 슈투야레아다 갈레르쇼 더 추시아사데 레랍지렘도 오만 주버글리기 손지나야레 추시아 셴겐스 두사네 다딜이야 아네 야나니 란라 다 꿰메버지 고레스 야나니 하바사버지 고레스 다드니 두사네 다 nga니버드레샤 드린드다 한바차버치지 마시아레 마도베 에네 신다케민도다 한바차버치야레다 데다디스 마데워르 제빈 한바차버치야데 디스갈라 카브르스도 드린주사네 지도 강도르지레데 샤다 임비냐 ngarange da kantudoruji mezuchen shuin.
As I mentioned yesterday, I'm feeling a little unwell. In fact, I feel a little bit worse today than I did yesterday. So I doubt that I will be able to teach you very well. And in any case, teaching Dharma is not an easy thing. As the Mahasiddha Drukpa Kunli said, to teach Dharma, you either have to be a perfect being or extremely boastful. I regard myself as the second type of Dharma teacher. But being that I feel somewhat unwell, I think it would be hard for me even to be boastful. In any case, I will do my best.
다들이 안데시아 다들인 스니시아디 마시다 당기 드시히나시레 상마 미상마 숑기 유스 말에 드림 비준센 데네 ane dezen ni sueje en dirin jeza dezen ni sueje de suegar chabi indusan da dirin de sani xiya ki chöru de baji jigor입니다 baji tabe chö sani xiya go menro dirin jusane digyunze de da zodi yamen tabalhaji zebe ki tabe chö shi dorman tishaya.
As Tenzin Chunyi mentioned, not all the members can fit in the shrine room at one time, so we've had to divide you into 2 groups. So therefore I'm going to try to say much the same thing, or teach much the same thing today and tomorrow, which will be basically an explanation of the 4 Dhammas of Gampopa.
다 될래요. 가르치려고 디 다다 답을 취시디기 안에 상계 서로 용서 조합에 대 마상하면 봐. 기부 숨기 다 로에 림바다 뒤니 사람 저거도 야나 딱한도나 답을 취시부 디나노래야 안에 상계 서로 용서 조합에 내 말류번 뒤니 여버지 송가래.
The 4 Dhammas of Gampopa is an explanation that includes all the Dharma taught by the Buddha in its completeness, or otherwise put, comprises an explanation of the complete path for the 3 types of persons.
다들이랑 애들이 뉴스단에 그런 식으로 다들 난 대신 저거도 그래. 대양 조지 반대 어디시야 별이야 배네 배기다 뚜초기다 개버르제다 개보 살람 선수 얘기 소하다베 몰라 되네 선수 남기 드면 되네 되네 친지에도 되네 기부숨 길럼림시 용서 잡아지 되네 총인 그래.
When Lord Atisha came to Tibet in response to the supplication of a king of Western Tibet, Lama Jongchub, he composed his illumination of the stages of the path, which was the original source text for the gradual path for the 3 types of persons.
다 전주 남전 디나로리아 기부 숨기나는 기부 당분이 도르sam당 기부 치마 데 예버시에네 송예버레.
In his illumination of the stages of the path to awakening, Atisha briefly explains the stages of the path for the lesser and intermediate individual, and extensively explains the stages of the path of the greater individual.
데네 다보는 미치기 데네 기부 침벽이 럼름 개버된 배체도 답을 타긴 제베니스 기부 숨기기 럼름 된 배체도 람저름 부지 청원 제베인체 안 다보가 유케바 가시도 숨겨라.
Some learned masters of our Dakpo Kaju have said that in order to expound the stages of the path of the greater individual specifically, Lord Gampopa composed his jewel ornament of liberation. And in order to expound the stages of the path for all 3 types of persons, he composed his precious garland of the supreme path.
다들이야 람쇼 rumbuji 중화들이야 데네 람쇼 rumbuji 중화디 생신wen지 백업라 다 미더월 니르 존디 가래 지디 람쇼 rumbuji 중화데 답에 근본 나로리아 측제지 가래 측제만 가래 다디 람쇼 rumbuji 중화데 딜랑는징 오래 소야지라 양 람저 림부지 칭와스 최신 망부에 되봐 첨바 근데 남장 망부에 되봐 진짜 용대가 알아 대 람저 림부지 칭와레 소니 나버니 림부지 용대가 알아
However, there are two opinions about which of Lord Gampopa's writings is most properly called the Precious Garland of the Supreme Path. Within Lord Gampopa's collected works, we find a versified work, which sometimes is said to be the text that should actually bear that name. And then there is also the prose work, which gives lists of Dharma topics, which is also, according to some, a text which should be called the Precious Garland of the Supreme Path.
그 군기 빼마 가르볼서베 루버가 유기 다 딘지 망부지 얘기做的 측지 얘기 측지에도 된배다 남림디 측지에도 기본성 열람 된샤디 다배 근본의 예대 다디 남저를 위해 청와대 되는 문제는 거 알아 그래서 딘 제바 제시네 다 가져에 여비임bre 제시에 군기 배만 가면 제시면 제시들이 용도
The omniscient Pema Karpo and other great Drukpa Kagyu masters have principally taught that the versified text within Gampopa's works should be identified as the Precious Garland of the Supreme Path. And they emphasized that, and therefore the omniscient Pema Karpo composed a commentary on it.
다나 신기 다다디 남정 림부치 칭와디 측제마디 답을 취시게 저숑저버 사마래 자완저버디 아니디 남정 림부치 칭와 측제마디 문지 다지 송도
They also identify the versified Precious Garland of the Supreme Path as the original source text for the Four Dharmas of Gampopa.
다들이야 다 추식이 자와서 말이야 다지 될라 되네 될이야 되네 감보 바르니 제샤베기 다 람저르 부지 칭와서는 자도 다들이 측제마 추식이 자와레사 될이야 되네 제 권변 제베 제 검주기 제베 소말다 버지 검주임자 제 검바침베 제베 제바지 용데도 안다나 신기 제 파모 주변 제베기 티버침베 러림 티징 러림 제 용데 하래
Among early commentaries on the versified Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, which is regarded as the source text for the Four Dharmas of Gampopa, is an early commentary most likely composed by Dakpo Gomso, Lord Gampopa's nephew, and another one composed by his disciple Lord Pamodrupa, which is an explanation of the stages of the Mahayana path.
되네 다나 신기 다보름 붙이기다 응월롭래 다보름 붙이기 응월롭 되네 솔라야바 전중의주고 제샤베 전중의주기 취식이 잔제지 제버 취시 자와지다 취식 제바진제임bre 미세기 취식 자와다 잔제지 인제임bre 가다 예버지 잔제 예버지 제임bre
There is also a root text with an auto-commentary that is quite extensive, composed by Lord Gampopa's direct disciple, Jongjup Ngudrup.
드레인 주산에 다 디기 정중무룩인 제샤베 롤라야베 제샤베기 드네 가르소에다 취식 잔지데 치수 다보거기와 상매기 다지 취식이 자와로부터 추시 시에 겁이야 시전로부터 로라야 베제샤부터야 시저 송제 아니 추시 드시는 거 있어요.
And it is this root text or root source text of the Four Dharmas of Gampopa, written by Jungju Ngudrup, that has been taken as the principal source text for all explanations of the Four Dharmas by subsequent Dokpo Kagyu masters.
어다들이 인주산에 디균zen된 다데 저다 도도로디 다다디 타보름 진제 샤베기 남자를 부지 칭와사디 나로래야 취지 책사디베나 최최스 조사르다 로최스 조사르디 칭원스도 벌써 통금에 배sor지 이르시도 다이네야 다디 홀라야 벤제샤와 디나로 취지 자와 디나로래야 다디 취지 자와도 조 다보름 부치기마 셴네 송샤보다 이기를 팝샤버지입니다 디나로래야 취지기 칭원스 된거 같다 취지기다 최최스 노알서
Now, whereas in the precious garland of the Supreme Path, composed by Lord Gampopa himself, we don't find the actual words we now use to describe the four dharmas, such as the mind going to the dharma and so forth, we do find these in the root text written by Jungju Ngudrup, which therefore we assume was based on oral teachings he received from Lord Gampopa himself.
다들이 인주산에 다 샴리아 다 추시지만도 디제를 그래 다들이야 추시디 셰인주산에 다 가시나는 쉐당부들이야 추시유나는 쉐당부들이야 로쉐스도 사지도 용대도 다이네 가시는 이내야 로라야 발서베 제샤베 이진이고디도 나로래 추추스도 와사지 용 데즈만라지
Among the four dharmas, there are two versions of the first. There is the mind going to the dharma, but also in the earliest texts, such as that of Lord Layapa, Jungju Ngudrup, it is the dharma becoming dharma.
다들 인주자 디디 책디 만다르 비시부치샤디 치 중세 만다르다 전에 찍버리시면 좀 정도
Although these two expressions, the mind going to the Dharma and Dharma becoming Dharma, are certainly different in terms of the words or language, I think they have the same meaning.
다들이야 가르라다데 다들이 최최스 조사의 시샤를 더 도신다 다들 로체 조사 넘기 가시나 요한디 알다 이니 개바스금 최최스 조사 최최스 조사의 콜이야
So I'm going to explain, in the context of the first Dharma, Dharma becoming Dharma, instead of the somewhat more common nowadays, the mind going to the Dharma.
다들이야 최최스 조사기 가르쳐다지 다 마신이야 대마시 건드립시야보다 다 도저래 다 되려야 가버를 붙이기 다 가르쳐요 알았으나 다당아 심지에나다 팬 더원디 저 가단 비구진스 다들이 송요 알아 제장 가버를 붙이기 튜모기 제 튜모가 나오서는 민도 간단지 로마 지당 가져나 베걸이야 조디 에네 가담베 저 가담베게 다 람림 조디 토하는 만 가주는 게 유스래
Before beginning an explanation of this, however, I need to tell you that Lord Gampopa made a statement in which he said that his ability to benefit beings came from his training in Lord Atisha's Kadampa tradition. So when he taught most of his disciples, and most of his teachings consisted of explanations of the gradual stages of the path according to Lord Atisha's Kadampa tradition.
Then, just a pena to zoom came, but Tomarji Gambo Bejavi to Sane and Gambo Begi and a Kadambe Rimji Nanche, the Korangi, Nye Yamlin Degarachi, Korangi Tara Yamlin Chi Sonje, and that Leginabeluare.
For example, it is said that when Dusum Chenpa was first taught by Gampopa, Lord Gampopa said to him, gave him the Lamrim, or the gradual stages of the path instructions, and said, I practiced this, you practice it too.
Dana Shingi Gambobe Karasun Arsana, Cho Naropani Gibe, Dangadi Kashwada Chilibshambres, Imbinea, Kadambe Gita, Menga Dati, Tindrevita, Dangwa de Kadambe. Nyamlen da jawa chu mojo ina ane pedoshira yung mare so.
About this, Lord Gampopa said that while the instructions which descend from Lord Naropa have tremendous blessing, without the practice of the Kadampa instructions, they won't work.
Di garasung gorasana Kadambe ge da kiwusum gi menga de Loren Ding Tasum Pen Shawas. Ji Kasagi Ji Nuba Chijung Dang Lord of Chijung Kadajimbi there, Tadara Susu the Tsambegi Ji Dangwa Yubi Mare. Yina Chagan Chimbugi Jo Naropanama Yubi Chagan Chimbo the Naruchuru of Dangwadi, Zodi Da Kasa Loy Nuzu Shindu Shawa. Tizulia Sumbi Dusana. The Kansa the Loy Nuzu Tishu the Gaza Malevilia, the Danshavina, and she lapid over Maras. This one.
It seems that his point was that while the Kadampa teachings, since they give the complete path for individuals of the three different levels of disposition, are more helpful for people in general, because they can be adapted to and practiced by anyone at any level. In contrast to that, Lord Naropa's teachings of Mahamudra and the 6 Dharmas are specifically designed for those of extremely acute faculties, and therefore if they're taught to anyone before they have progressed to the point where their faculties have become extremely acute, they won't work.
차게치비 냠렌칭이지비나 당부 큐몽게 남장 원도 소에 토네 큐몽게 남게르 버드스 원도 소에 토네 디 로림신 장네 다 로에 체르비 레베이나 다드네 신네 차게치보다 나루치르르 사베기 냠렌치아디 에 참바신이바 이제 공네 가담비 큐몽게 람림들이야 전주 첨부당해.
Therefore, when Lord Gampopa guided Mahamudra practitioners, he had them precede the practice of Mahamudra per se by an extensive training in the common path. And once they reached the level at which Mahamudra practice and instruction were appropriate, he would then present Mahamudra, and in some cases, the 6 Dharmas of Naropa. Therefore, in his teaching overall, by far his greatest emphasis was on the Kadampa gradual stages of the path.
Kadamba Sadi Kadajre Sana Dene Sangi Sung Yi Naji Gamaluba Tamje Dene Damado Sharwa Tamje Yamlen to Jitobachi Didi Chumbina Dene Kadamba Saji Kasure Didi Yamlen Chingijilla Kadamba Sigare Dene Dusane Jidanga Sangi Begi Nabasangi Balia, Tigwa the Truth Mindra Mangware. By in a Tigwa the Truth Mindra Mangware, the Kashua Digi Kashua Jabachak Shidabjira Yana G 디 초리자 시럽지 되지 마차르체체 장물로 간사 지기 되네 로르림기 장베 된도 로르림기 컴퓨터 드라기 냠내도 저도 버럽지 되지 연구 알아 되게 주사나 디 준세나 되네 가서다 틱보다 추대기 남샤 컨디지에비네 탐지 라스스기 다 최이 냠내 컴퓨터 드라베 겐도 저도 버지 연구하데 가담비 최이 냠내 다 냠내기 냉가로 또 디샤리
The Kadampa tradition, the name of it, refers to the Buddha's teachings being used as practical instruction. And what this refers to is a teaching and practice style in which every single teaching given by the Buddha, without a single letter being omitted, is turned into or used as practical instruction. Although there are so many different philosophical schools and vehicles within Buddhism, the variety of these do not exist to serve as the basis of argument or sectarianism. They exist because of the need for a gradual development of the person or individual who practices. Therefore, no matter how many different philosophical schools or vehicles may be present within Buddhism, their purpose is to facilitate the appropriate and gradual development of any single individual through the various stages of the path. And the best presentation of how to use the teachings in this way comes from Lord Atisha's Kadampa tradition.
오다 드린 뉴스단에 다 디기 오르르 쉬저 소르체네 다 델레암 데네 다 최시디 만드시 쉬는서 당보 최최서 들어와사도 드제 쉬는 다데 저지도 데 다이나디 저지딘 되마고세 저지딘 된과 나시라 그거 준서게 당보도 단도나 최최서 들어와사데 다 당보도 당보도 되래 다 되게 기부 충분히는 된게 와래서
Having said that, by way of introduction, I will now begin to explain the actual four dharmas. The first, as I said, is the dharma becoming dharma. There is a root statement or root words about this, but I think they're not necessary. The point is that the first dharma, dharma becoming dharma, it presents, I believe, the path of the lesser individual.
다데라 최최수 좋아 손두산에 다 최최수 좋아서 두산에 텔레야 최최수 좋아데 셰발이야 얘라 최최수 마송어디 간데지래 좋아 최최수 마송어디 간데지래야 최최수 마송어서데 아 최최수 송어디 간데지래야 최최수 송어데스 this 좋아지 The
phrase Dharma becoming Dharma invites the question, well, what would Dharma not being Dharma or not becoming Dharma be like? And what is Dharma becoming Dharma like? When we phrase the first Dharma, the mind going to the Dharma, it's relatively easy to understand on the face of it. But when we phrase it Dharma becoming Dharma, it doesn't seem to mean much at first glance.
다들이 주사다 최최수 마송아 데 컨디지레 쉬비미나 다델야 직딩 최계기 단 직딩 최계기 가지고 시행왕도 송 직딩 최계기 그지 원규 컨트롤도 제방 다디 야나 지 레균데를 로버타와 진지가 왕기 되네 지 미개와 주당 미개와 주를 써봐 미개와 주 가서다지 되네 때는 원도당 일리기 공방 지 토야 매버르스다 되지 샤로이 비 두산에 다디 최최스 마송사데 되지
To deal with the first question, what is Dharma not becoming Dharma? It is when Dharma is practiced under the power, influence, or control of the 8 worldly Dharmas, or when there is a disbelief in causality or karma, when one engages in the 10 unvirtuous actions and other causes that will and other things that will prevent the Dharma from being a cause of higher rebirth or liberation.
다들이 두사 당에래 기부충우사데 그냥 좀 드시 쉬고 저거 정도 기부충우사들이야 남규 기부충우기 따지 기부충우사데 간데 쉬고르잖아 다 깨와치면 이체 되는 거지 뭐 시샤를 치고 다 깨와치면 응원퇴 가서 깨와치면 예송 그 동에 인지니 응원퇴기 대화 전도 년게 되지리야 기부 총무스 두산 되지리야 남주 용자가 기부 총무사 되지는 무지는 거
At this point, I had better explain what the term lesser individual refers to. As usually explained, it refers to a person who practices because they believe in future lives and therefore seek the pleasure of higher rebirth. That someone who practices with that goal or aim is called the lesser person.
다들이 될래야 지당 기부 총무 될래야 다 조배니 요래 엄마네 쉬야로 총송 조지의 패버스니 요래 다 조사데 당기 공도 쉬비 기부 총무들의 기부 총무 패버스하데 천대 관나 되는 년 된게 질이야 기부 총무 패버스하지 용도 요래
However, there are really 2 types of lesser individual, the principal lesser individual and the mere lesser individual. The principal lesser individual is the aforementioned person who practices because believing in future lives, they seek higher rebirth. The mere lesser individual is a person who practices for benefit in this very life because they don't believe in future lives.
다들이 뉴스안에 뒤균선 된다. 다들은 딜이야 가르쳐서나 나 가르치려고 그러다지 다 된다 도도를 시험이미나 땅 알아 좀 미망부지기 가르쳐 남균 가르치려고 그래 단 도스람 정도다 다 ngazuegi 아니 다 빠진 딜마데 가서로 델다데아지는 고고라도 드레인도 다 남규 ngazuegi 다 벤팅상기 뒤줄이야지 삼당비미나 아니 간데슬라우다 뒤름니 저집인 디나로 삼당비미나 아니 덴덴 아주 세브치지 최최소 송아 최최소 마송사디 디사 뒤르니 저집에 나올래야 그지 세브 통토야 수시
I think nowadays, in this 21st century, what constitutes Dharma not becoming Dharma is very evident.
다데 가르에서나 빼나 다딘사 뒤줄에 칭업의 약의 17야래 칭업의 약의 17제 다 미기다 대용 남이 체르친야래 다나신기 대용 doing Namilia, Guma, Shag Nubaina, Shuchimstayare, advertisement, some Cabrata, Tana Shinga Zugida, Pegil and Zejus of the Injigale consumerism, summer Taji. That the Zeju in Lu summer that in the consumerism, the President Zobulingi Chulu of Charge. Zobulingi the Chulu of Charge, and the Tamalogi, the Shivjigi, Kandarji, Chig and Duyungi, Yumegata, Lotine, Yedevit, Self Share.
For example, nowadays, external material progress has led to our being more distracted than ever before by sense pleasures. We are so devoted to our consumerism, which is further excited and incited by the advertising industry, that really consumerism has become our true religion nowadays.
원균 다 가르에 남중 아주 직된 최계 시야 저다 직된 최계 사데 셰두스단에 지 töna mena mega sarte 망보시야래 다이나티 직된 최계들의 지시 제두사 미망보시 응원했던 직된 최계 사데 네 띵축버를 지금 진르지 세버지 용도야 돼 깔아 갑시다도 töna mena mega 사다 시라시라 the misegi kachuda sonarji yongmindu.
Usually when we describe this issue, we do so in terms of the 8 worldly dharmas, being pleased by praise, disliking criticism, and so forth. But somehow when it's explained that way, people don't seem to really get it or feel it deeply.
Jigden chuge sa jidan jigden chuge la karna chasumyo re larda. Kawajida Nakujida Tatajida de Mangujaris, Jenichi Kawatene, Jesu somebody will take this Yarelata. Kawat days, 10 days, men, days, Magadri on the metro. Da Kandara de Yon the Yaris. Then you mean a cup delay, Jigdin Namjung Azuji, Shedaji, Jidin Chigi. 지든 추기 르통 체드 르통 세과기 내가 소데 거와 토데 유민데 아주 삼 동과데 개집시라는 샤 시에만 참습지 더가지 측이 돈 뜻이 잡자 되기 아주리아 내가 뭐마데 뭐쳐야 돼 가라 하고샤도
There are really 3 types of the 8 worldly dharmas. The benign 8 worldly dharmas, the malignant 8 worldly dharmas, and the mixed 8 worldly dharmas. Benign 8 worldly dharmas refer to the 8 worldly dharmas as they are present in the mind of a bodhisattva, who will have a tiny bit of the 8 worldly dharmas. When we talk about the 8 worldly dharmas, we're really talking about the need to give up this life with one's mind, to let go of this life, to let go of the 8 worldly dharmas with one's mind. However, when we use the traditional words of explanation of this, somehow people don't seem to get the point.
간다라 수수에게 가서 셴바 지 수수에게다 완드 섬으로다지 대바다 셴바 코네 완도 친다 미글롱하는 신을 찾아 아다 드지기 아리아다지 링에게 배 가서 삼로 낸데 마당으로지 다 드지기 로데아지리아 안천 천디 셴바사 버지 드지중 문제 제고 유스래
I think what is meant by an obsession with the 8 worldly dharmas or an obsession with this life is our inability to think clearly or see clearly because we are so overpowered by our desire and craving that they blind us.
Benanda Kabra Tan is a TV de TV as a manipulate cigarette. Takba Dan Takwachin and manipulate Chingy Jangan, that ranges on Goyong and Janga. That did you not time you son, Kabra time you son, and the Gachi Susu Nguene, G. Unetανege, Arano Guba Karimba, Muguba Karimba, Tindig some of Tomo Mevasan and Rando. Yanane Samlo Medama Cheji, Tinjiji Gita Kandra Chigi, that doing number Tratus in D, the number Digi, that ye want me to go in some weather, ye want me to tron, that digital digity. They did you say then that Tigi, as a carton or another, send the Shambasadi, Kandiji Medi, that Muslim Jinjan of the meeting ground.
For example, the advertising that is presented on television and in other media manipulates us. It's designed to manipulate us so that we lose sight of the difference between what we really need and what we really don't need. We can't distinguish between these two, and we don't or can't think about them clearly because we are so beguiled and deceived by advertising that we really lose our mental autonomy to them.
In a chain Yamlen to us, Chigi, Azurity, Carsodaji, Shambar, Taramido, Tasmido. Something getting to you. Niman Yanga in the bottom the Niman Yanga, Yamlen to charge in it. Milam Nalole, Chuan Yamiching, Statungamino. Diane Niman Yanga, Legasindar, Chedin, and Kondati, Milam Natayodua. That dig did sing Azuji, Shambachi Jones and Andado, Semli Adaji. But choose Yamlecha di Chikatre Chune about a Majune, Kira, Keba Mesam Sonrochi. The sum that the some good Mardina, Loy Surgina, at the end of Chik Karasuri, Yede Vesorchi. That in it, Tangisha de Chin, do you launch it is not that manner. Karasur Tupcha de Avarochi. The Nijigata under some Shukshimburuchi. Takada low. Shuktaburu's Yavi, Teledense, a ton of minimum to Jella, down the house of the yard.
Of course, we practice Dharma, but we're not as attached to Dharma. We don't crave Dharma in the same way that we crave sense pleasures and so forth. For example, even if you practice Dharma all day long, you still probably don't dream about Dharma, you dream about other things. But if you do anything else all day long, you're liable to dream about it. And I think this is a sign of our degree of attachment. If we're really attached to something, we'll dream about it. We don't actually think, I don't care about Dharma. But in the back of our mind, there's a feeling, well, it's okay if I do Dharma, it's okay if I don't. I'm not really that attached to it. And so I think that this is a sign that what we dream is a sign of what we are really attached to in the depths of our mind.
That means that that kind of chicken doing the kind of longevity, that kind of as you do. Yuve Sushi, that church in a Yoba Chaju Yuve Sushi, Bentisan, G. Carre, and the Carre Daji. And did some to Masebe, that under College Lauda. That Mangu shadow, that Shemashes came, the dark under Karin Mene, Carre. That Rizigi, Chigi, that Dungi, that Longeru, did. Chi Xiangwando, Ngubuxin, Ngubu Chi Gidang, the material things of Chi Ngubu Dizwigin, Xiangwando, Chinche, and the Rangliaji, Samlo, Nenden Tangakichi, Comba Mebam, Rawan Mebaro, Tindiki want Madanchi, some Nenden Tanchi. 오늘 전에 수술은 오늘 전에 고야 가림바 수술이야 오늘 전에 줍 고야 된다로 가림바 다디 수술 삼네 내단들이 제거하다 계십니다 다 검들이 기부 충분사다 벌써 수도 되지 삼동 고야르지 삼로 자전부터 다바다 탐지기마다 지사야서 이제야 말다 다디 수도 오늘 천들 삼담비네 수술은 오늘 고야 가림바 뭐야 가림바디 삼동 고
Nowadays, our attachment to or craving for pleasure and for material things has actually made us a little crazy. We are under the power of these material things. We give them, we surrender our power to them, which means that we're left with no freedom, no autonomy to actually think clearly and to think about the question, what do I really need? And what is my goal? What am I really trying to do? We need to actually think carefully about these things. And I think that that type of careful thinking is the main contemplation for the lesser person or lesser individual. It doesn't necessarily involve highfalutin ideas like the perfect omniscient awakening and so on. It's mostly a consideration, what do I really need? What is my true goal? Even if you're thinking about this life in particular.
That range is an Kibu Karshuradaji Kibu Chungsari. Takandar, some to other, so the Tangikonsuan and Singi, that's over near of Everest, Tata Kandara, the Tindis showing data, Tikism data, Tata Konsuan and Sin, this showing churches draw us a day, churches draw us an andando, that lodges draw us an andando, that in this younger stuck under Tindegi, Kashurji, so sugi, Goa, Harim, but the so sugi, Hakone, then it telea, Shuina. Then Sosuki Karasambanasi Karas Miu Kandishabati, Drubiati, Langat, and Rotores. The day my service energy chin Dungi, Ruti or Shawina, Sosu Sambanasi, Chawasam, the Langat and Rotumanas. Then to the churches draws at the Andara Nangarabati, the day that Chigi, the Karasbradaji. Sendi da shamba chapo so mata sendi shamba sa sendi shamba jungsi me ba da yong se ma ra ina kam de li sendi shamba sa tangin na xin gi je ling yi gi sam za na ma da che mi zum ni ro de a gi de ji gi da ka ro shamba chen bo de mi long de bi shamba sa ma ba da ji mi long a de bi shamba de ji chen da sho se ya ma da ring ju de di jun ze de ne de ji bang ji chin bi na de ne chue chue so ro to si ko le so.
Although, as I mentioned before, there are two types of the lesser person, the principal and the mere lesser person, I think in either case, Dharma becoming Dharma, or the mind going to Dharma, you can put it either way, really consists of this. The contemplation, the careful thinking, what is it I need? What is my purpose? And if we can answer that question, if we recognize what we truly need and what our aim truly is, then because we see our goal, we'll be able to walk toward it along the path. However, as long as we remain so beguiled by material things that we are blinded by our own craving and attachment, we cannot travel the path because we can't even see the path. It's impossible that we can be utterly without any craving for this life, but it is essential that we not be blinded by our craving. We cannot walk the path with eyes shut or closed by our craving. So I think this is the meaning of the Dharma becoming Dharma.
Tadinde ngaso di grammar ki karaza class means ati she moche. Tadrin du sane ta donakam dire chue sa di karbu gewe chue di tilako goyose. Susu ki gewa cheba di cheba najin ji miyu di taji ngondu ki chue lan rotu baruchi. Gewa cheba najin ki di miyu drubaji di yong goyebina. Antada kondu cheba najin ki and jinji di chue gewa na masong tri ko resa jibta.
It's said, of course, that the word Dharma has 10 meanings, but as this is not a grammar class, I don't think we need to go through them. In this context, Dharma refers to virtue, and in the specific context of the path of the lesser individual, since their primary purpose is higher rebirth, it refers to the virtue that is conducive to or will cause higher rebirth.
Niegda umaji nyongzor bichung tiji kyan tu shushwa. Ta maji tuzu di sin sayamja. Ni tevas ke ndo. Ta tangi damba mangbu shibin de so. Niegi tuzu di damba dis occupy chesa. Ta nge pa yan de zi ngenji chena ma da yosa ma. Ta dren du ta de la niegda nyongzor de ka ta nam ju nga ji shi yo da. Mara ju le ga khande ji shebe ina ya ji 가르쳐다 천디난게 셴바다 만들어 서머로 다 근데 그거를 이제 왠지 기분 담아는 되게 손하라.
I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience and so on. I realized that a lot of our time was taken up with liturgy at the beginning, which has kind of cut down the time that I have to talk. But in any case, to continue, holy beings have taught us again and again that we have to be free from all craving for this life.
이나 다들 갈라합샤에샤 다들 지 아주 개발을 니치하고 서sam정도. 배나 강아주 배발을 다 캬도 디셈든 디게제요 말다 이네 배바드즈 빠사디 디게션 버체. 브리브스 잠바 박
I think it's very hard to be without any craving for this life, but I think we have to be able to divide attachment to this life into two categories. To use a specifically Tibetan example, which may not really mean much to Westerners, for Tibetans, the dough that we make for our breakfast out of tsamba, out of parched barley, is very significant.
샤오베기 브레이크파스트 때 잠바 인공 니 런치 때 잠바 원다 디 디너 때 잠바 다 베바드스 때 바제다 잠바데 중에 신다 마중데 리도.
In fact, it's so much used. Breakfast largely consists of tsampa. Lunch, again, is another serving of tsampa. And dinner is, again, a third portion of tsampa. So basically, if you're a Tibetan, you can probably get by even if all you get to eat is tsampa.
다들 주사네, 다 잠바서 주사네, 잠바서 주사네. 아니, 가서 지대 최계당 만져가지고 고어 당원에서는 고고. 다 이네디 지잖아 개점스 개래면도 son다. 잠바서든 지대 최계당 제나다 오즈스다. 다게 다 지 총나 만져가지고 아래 이내야도 마주나다 오즈. 다드네 신다지도 가라서랑 아주 최체. 오늘은 formal summer 배 무슨 배다 officially 인도 제제 봐. 다 들어가서 제목 좀 해. serious로 제제네. 지금 최체배 기제제 지금 봐. 냠낸 담배 기제. 다는 이제 최체배 기제. 제네다 지금 넘버는데 차도 세다 들지. 냠낸 제배 거. 그 디디스안에 다 전에도 만들어지. 아주 배주셔야 돼.
Well, it would be ideal if our consumption of tsamba were utterly unmixed with the eight worldly dharmas. It's probably okay if there's a little bit of eight worldly dharmas mixed in with our tsamba. ideal if not, but that's okay. But when we engage in formal, official, and serious Dharma activity, teaching, practice, and so on, chanting, prostrations, and whatnot, we need to be utterly free of the 8 worldly dharmas.
oil 간다 취기 박차 매버지 든지체는 되네 제비나 되네 따디 선배교르세 가라선다 넘주르디 대대한 사인도 최제비 넘주대네 다 나리아다지 수수 강토도르지 최的 튠바 샘디 최的 튠바르지 종마도나 따디지 데제 아저지 수수수수 고고단데야르지 드르비 차데야래 드리비 준센테네 아저기 내 당부 봤으나다도 아주 당부 트라이 제거에 찍대 가르도서나 수수 인연 당부직 최냐면 제거들이야 수수 그 로디 최게 지면 막을 바를 텐데 제거해야 돼 아주 공부 당부를 듣는지 제샤 다 되네마 림베야게 신선 되네 잠바서도 자네 되네 지된 최게 지면 그 막을 때 다여로 다 그래서 최냐면 제거는 지된 최게 지면 그래서 다 잠바서 거는 다 다디 가서 다디 알아 خبر جربتا
The problem is that often we maintain a dharmic demeanor, but are not dharmic on the inside, which is very sad. While it's fine that we develop a dharmic demeanor, what's most important is that we try our best to accord with Dharma in our insides. And this is what beginners first must practice, being without the 8 worldly dharmas in the context of Dharma practice and so on. That's the first step. And then once that first step has been mastered, one can eventually try to eat tsamba without any presence or infection of the 8 worldly dharmas. But if we allow our dharma to be infected by the 8 worldly dharmas, it's going to be very difficult for us to ever be able to eat tsamba without infection by the 8 worldly dharmas.
Other than you san and deacons there, that Kashway. That you tell me, yes. Ora da ondona Kashway. Oh my goodness. Empty. Oh, that range, the digit that Jidian Chigges had the Kashwataji, Lomji by Samarataji, Shenyam Chevakolati, Kashum Sharesha. Kain Sana Kashwataji Maju Namju Tuzu Mangushiji. 최념의 제백을 뒤주 망보지 룽아게 뒤바 땅데 면로 삼정도 지 가서 최념의 미망보지 도나치하다 뒤주 망보지 에너지 룽아게 넘준도 될이야 치 주주를 치 넘준도 될이야 뒤주 망보시 땅데 아버지 그러나 고음지 잡이는 게지 가서다 어디 땅에야 도시는 저도 배나 원주 땅비냐 다지 마체지 장가대라 뒤주당대야 소치 가시베지 emphasize 해야지 다 마시도 장가래 뒤주마다나 들어줘 뜻이 다 장가대 차로 마시 때 강에를 정리 걸었다 미망고세 다 링주스 뒤균센데는 아주기 토나 체삼 뒤주당스럽디 오늘 전에기 nen가로 뒤토려야 땅모도 체체 뒤 뭐임버지 강이야 토나다 뒤주망고 싶다는데 면로서 단 nen가데 간다 최사데 치 룽아 유로점기 된거 말해 깨 마로 가서 깨 마로 단 되는 잠으로 단 집이 핑겨 말해 가나지 류기 남주르 무드라 망보지 시합디 팽겨와 다시 수비 냠주르디 팽겨와 조조의 소수기 다 시간이 벌써나라도 다나 신기 랑 심규 경고된 뉴트버스 고 알아요. 될 뒤주 망보지 당 알아요.
It's important, therefore, that in our practice of Dharma, we not be beguiled by the eight worldly Dharmas. We put a lot of time into Dharma practice, but I think that most of it is limited to our bodies and our speech. We exert a lot of energy, physically and verbally, but principally what we're cultivating is the mere outer demeanor of Dharma. For example, in our practice of Ngundro, the preliminary practices, we don't emphasize the point of each practice. We are more concerned with getting through the required numbers, which we find very hard. And we put too much attention on the numbers, which means we're ignoring the point and emphasizing that which is not the point. Exertion of body and speech is simply not enough to soften our speech so that we speak softly, and to form lots of mudras with our hands is not enough. We have to actually tame our minds.
어디 유산다 그냥 알아는 집이냐 오늘 전에다 가져야지 베나다 미주 사블이야지 nga lo tyun lebe ka lo chi kama be chen ming ru ta bre ming ta ba de le ne lam sa ji ji ka ru bang do yun de ru chi lam sa zo ji da ji ka ru nu ba chen chen bu ji cha bre sam ru ji superman ru cha bre sam tang ga de ne nga de je ya ma le mi expectation di che sa re ine nga ra de shi ne chri chi gyu ji dan da ga ji 롭좀 지규를 제제디 유에 인도산에 에너지 갈아 가버스 용데 가래 아나 드린 인도산 디 균제데네 간다 신다 expectation 제바 신기 expectation 제바나 신지 용거 용아 갈아 가버스다래 다나 지 나랑기 expectation 제바나 신지 나랑게 용거면도 다이미네 안다지 가르에 수수이 지다 남규 tū tādu jī jīdīn chūgī nāngwā dā mīndrāwa sā yuwa dā kāla khabu shārē shā dā dā ngī kāla khabu ndū sā dā ngā rā nyam nyung tōna shī gā rē dā dā nē yinā yā dā jī chū dā ndrāwa jī chāwa chēwē kāla yā jīdīn chūgī dā māndrāwa rū jī kā tū tū rū jī jīdīn chūgī dā māndrāwa chāk dā mōng sōng dā māndrāwa rū jī dā jī mbē zū rū jī kā tū tū rū chī gā yu bē kī jī rē dā dā ngī jū dī yun sā yā dā nē kā shū rē dā jī 하스버다지 지된다 만제와 샤다지 뭐종이네 종세지 다 가지고 배주를 채우게 저래 드레비 균산 때네 디기 냠용토한데 갸솔이야 슈고 아래 드레비 균산 때네 간다르지 가지고 수수기 최체바디 최체바 능신지기 시능규를 좀도 마세베 난된리야지 최체바로 롬바 점이봐 최 송아르지 대응 메탈이야다 같이 소수기 미유의 튠버지 연구하되 계신 버려서 다 들으셔야 해. 다들 이제 땅에 참다가 샤샤 가서래. 근데 클래스에 계신 분도 지된 최게 돼. Today is serious.
When I was given the name Karmapa at the age of 7, people assumed that I would immediately possess all of the complete qualities of freedom and realization, that I would be perfect like Superman. But I wasn't. It was very hard because while people's expectations arose on the spot, my ability to meet their expectations had to be gradually developed. And I've had to try very hard to meet people's expectations, which is very difficult. It's very difficult for me not only to meet others' expectations, it's very hard for me to even meet my own expectations of myself. I would say, based on my own experience, therefore, that it is very difficult to be always free from the 8 worldly dharmas. But at least it is essential that when we engage in dharma activity of any kind, we be free from the 3 poisons of attachment, aversion, and apathy. We have to try. I'm telling you this because it's my own experience, and I hope it will be of use to you. It's important that dharma not just be external, not just a matter of demeanor or some kind of empty performance or show. It has to be internal. It has to actually affect, change, and improve our minds. If we can do that, then our dharma activity, our dharma practice, will be in accordance with our actual goal or purpose, and therefore dharma will become dharma. I'm going to stop here because in accordance with the 8 worldly dharmas, it's very important that we eat.